You know that character that when you pick them, it feels like the game just doesn't want to cooperate? Yeah, today we're going to talk exactly about them. The worst characters for each playstyle in Marvel Cosmic Invasion. Whether it's melee combat, ranged attacks, or team battles, there's always that hero, or villain, who leaves everyone wondering, why am I still playing with this guy? So brace yourselves, because your favorite character might just appear on this list, and maybe you'll realize why those matches were so difficult.
My arc reactor needs to cool down.
The aggressive Rushdown style is like the beating heart of this cosmic beat 'em up. It's all about invading the enemy's space without mercy, with fast, brutal melee combos where every punch or dash strike explodes in high damage and sends Annihilus's bugs flying everywhere. I love this vibe because it makes me feel like a hurricane of fists, running with a double tap to close the distance and interrupt any of their ranged attacks. You know what makes Rushdown so addictive? That insane rhythm of non-stop pressure, mixing basic attacks into long strings with specials that clear entire groups. It's perfect for those who like being the aggressor, using the dash attack to break enemy formations and create openings for more insane melee damage. For me, it's like dancing in the chaos, predicting the next jump or block while your focus builds up for a devastating super. But look, not everyone fits this mold, and Rocket Raccoon is the perfect example of someone who slips up badly in this style. Despite having a gun that promises range, his melee reach is ridiculously short, like a raccoon trying to punch a giant. I tried forcing him into Rushdown, and it was pure frustration. You get close, but enemies push you out with long pokes, leaving Rocket way too vulnerable. The problem gets worse in close quarters, where Rushdown shines for others, but Rocket simply can't keep up. He's more of a trickster, throwing chaotic grenades and gadgets from afar, but when things get tight in melee, that short reach becomes a joke. You whiff combos, get exposed, and the bugs eat you alive. I've cleared stages switching to him thinking I was going to dominate, but I left with a bruised ego. I always think of Rocket as the ranged ambush guy, not someone to stick to the enemy like a Wolverine or She-Hulk. In aggressive Rushdown, you need mobility to maintain pressure, but Rocket struggles to counterpunch in close 1v1s, overextending and paying dearly for it. It's frustrating because he has explosive potential with grenades, but force him into melee and he becomes an easy target for elites. At the end of the day, Rushdown is for those who love getting their hands dirty on the front lines, but pick Rocket for zoning or ranged support. Forcing him into this is like trying to run a marathon with short legs. Experiment with him in open waves to see the grenade chaos, but leave the Rushdown to the real bruisers. You'll feel the difference immediately. The distance control style is, for me, the safest and most efficient way to play Marvel Cosmic Invasion. You try to command the screen space, erase waves before they touch you, and minimize dangerous melee trades as much as possible. And that is exactly why Wolverine becomes the worst possible fit, because he is a character designed to stick to the enemy, not to control the screen. When the focus is clearing waves without risk, the mindset changes. Instead of jumping into the chaos, you play as if you're always preparing a safety corridor. You prioritize eliminating long-range threats first, prevent flanks, and avoid getting stuck in long animations, because in this style, every mistake turns into free damage that could have been avoided just by staying out of range. What makes this style shine is having tools with real reach, shots, beams, projectiles, specials that cover an area, and consistency to deal with enemies that spawn spread out, flying, or shooting from off-screen. Characters with screen covering attacks or who can touch targets without exposing themselves turn chaotic waves into an almost automatic routine. Here enters the problem. Wolverine is practically the opposite of this, because he depends on proximity play and constant ground pressure. Even community tier lists and guides usually point out that he has no ranged options and struggles against flying enemies, which are exactly the type of threat the distance control style wants to solve without drama. And the feeling playing like this is very specific. You see the wave spawning, and instead of deleting it from afar, you are forced to cross the dangerous space to start working. Even when his kit is strong in melee chaos, the distance style makes you feel like you're playing against the character itself, because every wave clear becomes a sequence of micro risks. Approach, expose yourself, hit, reposition, repeat. So if your fun is controlling the screen and clearing waves without committing, Wolverine tends not to be worth it as a main in this style, unless the team compensates with someone with range. He works much better when the proposal is to be the frontline guy, holding elites, punishing up close, and creating space through sheer force. And if you try to turn him into a zoner, the game punishes you with flyers, projectiles, and situations where you just wanted to press a button and solve it from a distance. The Grappler with throws style is for those who like to be glued to the enemy, forcing contact, reading movement, and turning every opening into a grab that changes the rhythm of the fight. The fun for me is feeling like you are bossing the melee range. It's not about hitting faster, it's about commanding respect and deciding where the fight happens. When this style clicks, it feels unfair for the other side. You interrupt charges, break psychological defenses, and dismantle waves by pulling key targets into the wrong position. The feeling is one of physical control of the field, because a good grappler doesn't just take health, they reposition, separate dangerous enemies, and create space so as not to be swallowed by the crowd. But then comes Storm as the worst character for this proposal, because her kit doesn't converse with this idea of I want grabs all the time. What she offers more naturally is spacing and keeping away, and when you try to push her into a grappler, roll, it feels like an essential piece of the puzzle is missing. The grab that initiates the plan. Her push might exist as a control tool, but for a grappler style, this usually feels like a consolation prize. It pushes, but doesn't convert into relevant damage, doesn't fix the enemy in place, and doesn't create that sequence of threat that makes the opponent respect you. And the worst part is that without real grabs, you lose the grappler's main shortcut, transforming an approach into an immediate reward. In practice, what happens is you find yourself trying to play in a way the character doesn't want to. You get close, but you don't have the button that defines the archetype. In large waves, this becomes even clearer, because a good grappler needs either consistent grabs to erase priority threats, or tools that sustain the risk of staying glued. And Storm, as described, delivers neither. So if you are on the team that loves grapplers, the pleasure of fishing for a throw, punishing an approach, and winning at close-range chess, Storm probably isn't worth it in this style. She might be great in other proposals, but for those who want to live off grabs, the experience tends to turn into frustration. Too much effort for too little conversion. And that constant feeling of, if I were with a real grappler, this wave would be over by now. The aerial style is that way of playing where you try to stay off the ground as much as possible, using verticality to dominate the rhythm of the stage and pick fights from above. If this is your addiction, She-Hulk tends to be a very frustrating choice, because she is clearly a more grounded character, focused on grappling and throws, and this takes a toll on mobility. When this style clicks, it feels like you're almost cheating the map. You use vertical space to avoid lines of fire, escape sieges, and attack from angles that most enemies don't cover very well. And the best part is the feeling of control. Instead of reacting to chaos, you position yourself before the chaos happens, rising to a higher plane and forcing the game to chase you. But this style has a very clear requirement: consistent mobility, rapid repositioning, and tools for staying in the air. Flight, air dash, better jumps, or safe aerial pressure. When the character has this, you can turn every encounter into a dance. Go in, touch, get out, change diagonal, and pull enemies to where you want them. Here enters She-Hulk's problem in this package. The community constantly emphasizes that she is among the worst in general mobility, and that her kit shines much more when she can touch and start a chain of grabs. She was officially presented as a grapple and toss character, meaning her fantasy is grabbing and throwing enemies, not floating over them. So when your fun is staying up high with absurd mobility and superior positioning, it gives the sensation of playing against your own character. And totally slow is exactly how she can feel in this style, because even when you manage to do strong things, you feel you had to pay dearly in risk and travel time. Some people find tech and ways to speed up her game, like abusing dash attack / sprint attack and keeping the enemy in a cycle. But that becomes a somewhat forced plan B. It works, it just doesn't deliver that aerial freedom that defines the style. If you love playing in the sky, with high mobility and dominating superior positioning, She-Hulk is probably not the character that will feed that taste. She can be fun and strong when the plan is to close the distance and crush with grabs, but as an aerial choice, the tendency is for you to feel like you're stuck on the ground, watching the game happen above you. Crowd control is that style that brings pleasure, because you enter a full room and think, okay, I'll clear all this in a few seconds, using area damage, large hitboxes, and moves that sweep the screen. Without access to verifiable sources right now, I'll speak to the logic of this archetype. This style depends less on dueling and more on consistency against groups, keeping the wave trapped in hit stun / knockback while the area damage does the job. When group control plus wave clearing works, it gives you a sense of spatial dominance. You're not just hitting, you're controlling where enemies can stand. Your positioning becomes almost like a magnet. You pull the horde into a corridor, land a hit that strikes everyone, and turn chaos into routine. For those who like this style, the ideal character is one who does the basics very well. Fast attacks, wide coverage, and some type of tool that prevents the crowd from surrounding you. The problem is that this style has a cruel rule. If your kit doesn't deal well with multiple targets at the same time, you lose control and become a hostage to the confusion. And that's where a character with slow, single-hit moves, hits one at most, starts to suffer, because every attack becomes too big of a commitment. You trade clearing the wave for betting that no one will touch you while you finish the animation. Beta Ray Bill, within this description of slow single-hit attacks interrupted in groups, would be exactly the type of pick that fights against his own game plan. In theory, he might hit hard and seem great against larger targets, but when the swarm comes, the rhythm changes. You need priority and response time, not just impact. And if you're constantly getting interrupted mid-execution, every attempt to clear the screen turns into a mini punishment. In practice, those playing focused on area damage want actions that solve the situation. A strike that hits in an arc, an explosion, a charge that breaks through the enemy line, anything that regains control of the screen. Whereas a clunkier character forces you to play in the micro, choose a target, confirm, retreat, reset, and that is the opposite of wave clearing, which is about flow. So if your fun is literally erasing groups, this type of kit will give you the sensation of always being one step behind. That's why, if you are on the team that chooses a character thinking about crowd control and that pleasure of melting waves with area damage, it might not be worth insisting on Beta Ray Bill, at least as a main. Not because he is bad at everything, but because he might be bad exactly at what you want to do most. I would leave him more as a situational option, stages with fewer swarms, more spaced out fights, or when you want to play at a more patient and heavy pace. The tank style in Marvel Cosmic Invasion is for those who enjoy absorbing hits, trusting in regen, and turning durability into an advantage. You go in first, hold the wave with your chest, and let the team play more loosely. For me, it's a very satisfying way to play because it gives that sensation of being the group's anchor. While everyone else is worried about not taking a hit, you're worried about maintaining control of the chaos. When this style works, the goal isn't to be invincible, but to be consistent, trading hits for progress, keeping health stable throughout the stage, and reducing the risk of dying in a sequence. You pick fights that other builds would avoid because your kit, or your way of playing, was made to withstand mistakes, withstand chip damage, and stay standing even when the screen gets full. But then Spider-Man becomes a very bad fit for this plan, because he gives off a vibe that is naturally more agile and fragile than durable. Even if his dodge is okay, that type of defense is reactive and requires execution, whereas the tank style wants something more passive and reliable, like high sustain, regen, damage reduction, or some mechanic that rewards you for getting beaten up without collapsing. And the problem with depending only on dodge is that in practice, you end up playing the opposite of a tank. Instead of absorbing hits and maintaining presence, you are dancing so as not to be touched. Then any mistake becomes a huge hole, because low sustain doesn't give you that second chance the tank style needs to keep the rhythm of advancing, holding the screen, and protecting the team. In big waves, this gets even crueler. A good tank can stay in the middle, draw attention, and stay alive while the rest clear up. Spider-Man, being fragile, tends to be pushed into an in and out role. You can survive with movement and reads, but then it's no longer tanking, it's evasion, and the fantasy of absorbing hits and regenerating simply doesn't hold up. So if you are the type who chooses this style because you want durability, regen, and the peace of mind to make mistakes without getting deleted, it might not be worth insisting on Spider-Man for this proposal. He can be fun and efficient in more mobile and hit-and-run styles, but as a tank, the experience tends to turn into stress, lots of defensive work, little reward and sustain, and that constant feeling that you are always one hit away from losing control. When we talk about the boss killer style, we're talking about that player who lives for that epic moment of killing the boss in seconds. You know that feeling when you accumulate all your burst damage, set up that absurd combo focused on a single enemy, and watch the boss's health bar melt? That's what I'm talking about. If you enjoy ignoring the hordes of smaller enemies and going straight for the big boss's throat with devastating combos and explosions of concentrated damage, you definitely have the soul of a boss killer. The problem is that this style requires specialized characters, heroes who were made to concentrate all offensive power on a single target and destroy that giant health bar before the boss has a chance to react. We're talking about characters with absurd burst abilities, ultimates that do massive damage in single target scenarios, and mechanics that reward you for maintaining a long and aggressive combo focused only on the boss. It's a dangerous dance where you ignore everything around you and bet all your chips on deleting that boss from existence. Now comes Nova, and man, what a disappointment for those who like this style. Richard Rider has that vibe of a balanced hero, that famous jack of all trades who theoretically does everything, but in practice doesn't stand out in anything when you really need it. He has the Nova Beam that increases damage for a little while. He has mobility with flight. He can attack at various distances, but when you put him face to face with a boss and need concentrated and brutal DPS, he simply doesn't deliver what other characters deliver. The reality is that Nova was designed to be too versatile, and that becomes a curse when you want specialization. While characters like Cosmic Ghost Rider are applying absurd burst damage with chains and devastating combos, or Jean Grey is melting bosses with fire-infused attacks and insane multipliers, Nova sits there in the middle ground doing okay damage, without ever really shining. It's like bringing a Swiss Army knife to a sword fight. Yes, it has several functions, but you really wanted a real sword. If your thing is setting up those endless combos that make the boss unable to even react, If you want to see those giant numbers popping on the screen while the boss's life plummets in seconds, Nova is simply not the character for you. He doesn't have that concentrated burst potential that turns a boss fight into a spectacle of quick demolition. Other heroes will give you that satisfaction of seeing the boss being annihilated before even completing their first attack pattern, while Nova will make you work much harder to achieve the same result. So here's the tip. If you identify with this aggressive and focused boss killer style, it's probably better to invest your time in characters that were actually made for this function. Nova might be useful in other situations where you need versatility, but for that pure experience of destroying bosses with burst damage and concentrated combos, there are much better choices in the roster that will make you feel all that power this playstyle deserves.